We have an excellent panel ahead. We have 2 speakers, and then there will be ample times for questioning. The panel title is From Capitalism to Decoloniality, Nightmares and Visions. Our first speaker is Professor Valentina Tirloni. She's a tenured associate professor at Université Côte d'Azur in Nice. Graduated in philosophy and law from Pavia University with a PhD in political philosophy and social science, so continuing our good range of speakers. A professorial thesis in communication studies and professional habilitation as a lawyer. Her research deals with the anthropology and the ethics of technology, investigating how new technologies have impacted human life, the body and social life, focusing particularly on technology as means of communication. And she holds a great number of current EU projects, all of which look like they will have exciting outcomes in the AI field. Our second speaker, Professor Wolff, was born in South Africa during apartheid, raised in the US, and is a first-generation college student. An associate professor of religion at Augustana College, Wolff teaches classes on race, sexuality, religion, and ethics that contribute to the Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies program, as well as disability studies and health humanities. Their book, Body Problems, What Intersex Priest and Activist Sally Gross Teaches Us About Embodiment, Justice and Belonging, is currently in production at Duke University Press, so you can pre-order it now. Wolff's article, Companion Sex Robots, Racialized Household Economics, uses womanist ethics and African theology to critique the outsourcing of care labor, and won the Elizabeth Schuschler Fiorienza New Scholars Award. So we're in for an exciting panel this morning. I'll turn it over to Professor Valentina Tirloni. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'm very honored to be here, and I thank you. I thank Jennifer Hart and Catherine Tanner for this opportunity. I present this speech because I've been quite interested in the political aspects of technology. I always thought that they were just a tool, a means to do things, and I actually moved to the digital democracy question because in France is something that is going on more and more often, but I think that there is no epistemological questioning about this, so my fear is that they're just proposing a tool without discussing, especially because we have in France, I'm totally Italian, so I'm not a French citizen, but I live anyway in France. So the question is, why, if we have already a National Assembly, we have to pass through a digital democracy, especially on topics, on very important social topics. So as somehow we want to have a social debate on very important topics without having any transparency about the choice of those citizens who debate for us and decide for us. So the main idea is that, so I just anticipate my conclusion. I'm not so positive. I'm a negative optimist. Manuel Vargas said he was quite not so positive. I'm really negative optimist because I use the optimism to work on the negative aspects, because I think that there are very important problems that can be very easily hidden. So we live in a digital paradigm, and this is actually evident for every one of us. For me, the turning point was Martin Heidegger's essays on the question about techniques. Because it's true that we live in a world where everything passes through technological activity, the way we socialize, the way we work, the way we teach. COVID pandemic was a very easy example, and all this transformation is visible in any aspect of our social, working, professional, and even personal life. I worked also on web pornography, and it's quite scary to see how we can transform the very intimate human aspects of our personal life in something that is maybe possible through technologies, but it's still requiring an ethical issues. When I was a university student, I hated Heidegger because I was a very logician, I was quite a Husserlian, and I was like, there is just modus ponens and all symbolic logics. So for me, Heidegger was really the joker, the one who plays with words. And I read him when I arrived in France, and I said, this is not the good translation. This is not the same text. So I want to dig at this question. And actually, I discovered something that for me was important, because we stopped to think technology as just an instrument, a tool, and we deal, and Heidegger was the first one who actually focused on the metaphysical aspect of techniques and not only technology. And that was important because it means that techniques is is a part of us. We invented in order to survive, but nowadays all the ethical question is how this technique is autonomous. Who drives the ethics? Who drives the technology? So the word Heidegger used was das Gestell. And I know I worked on the European translations of this word because very literally it means staff, something that has a function. You cannot even give a name, and something that is very similar to a shelf. So when I looked for the different translations, it was really different. I mean, you cannot pass through the different. If the original text was missing, and we would have to translate from France or from Italian, we wouldn't have the same word. So, as you can see, I just ask you to focus on the notion of device, which is the American translation. The British translation is much more on framing. I remember someone thanked Professor Schweiker because he was able to frame again the question. So it's nice how words come again. And the other one is dispositif. I'm sorry, because we cannot translate. It's not similar to device, because device has a material part which is actually easy to control. We can decide to stop using watches, to stop using laptops or servers or phone, mobiles, and so on. But in the idea of Michel Foucault, French dispositif, you have all the immaterial part of technology, which actually englobe power. So das Gestell is in the interpretation I wrote on this, all the possible application of the verb stellen. So if you change the preposition, you have different activities. And if you look at the kind of activities, you will see that is actually everything. You produce something with technological tools. You just exhibit your life on social media. You just show yourself. You represent a world. Even information, it's a kind of representation of the world, of what is going on. And it's also the way you have to stock data on data center or to stock natural resources to produce. So in my interpretation, this G is actually what allows us to unify all the possibilities techniques can give us. And exactly as the collective noun in German, Gewässer, which is the abstract idea of all the possible waters, lake, river, ocean, sea, whatever kind of water. So Gestell, das Gestell, is all the possible meanings we have with the verb stellen, which is very close to the ponere, the Latin ponere, which is actually the root of the word dispositif. So Michel Foucault, who actually acknowledged the influence of a German philosopher, even if it was not so well considered in France at a certain moment, described dispositive as something very heterogeneous, something that is not precisely identified. And what is important for me is stressing on the immaterial aspect of this dispositive, because what we cannot see, it is able to force us doing things. So the quotation, I mean, I just go a bit through. And what is important is that in the notion of dispositive, you have the idea of a strategy. There is a need, an urgent need, so we have to find a solution. So technique is never neutral. Technique is a means, is metaphysically important, but is designed for a purpose because there is a political design behind. And this is also important from ethical issues, because traditional ethics in general consider that the responsibility of the users is much more important of the one who designed the tool. So a knife can be used to kill someone or to cut vegetables. So it's up to me as a user to say, yes, I'm going to do a good use of this tool or not. But nowadays, with all the technological tools and devices, this responsibility is not anymore on the user side. It's much more on the side of the programmers, of the one who wanted that tool. So I think this is very important for philosophy to collaborate with computer science and actually recognize that the programmer is responsible for this. In French, we distinguish dessin et dessin. The pronunciation is absolutely the same. So French people adore to complicate things. And they just put an E, and it's not just the idea of a drawing, it's also the idea of a strategy, which is a quite military word. So apply this to democracy. It's impossible to define democracy. There is a very huge literature on political theory, science. So we can, and we have also to consider and compare what is comparable. There are also constitutional systems that are completely different. So just consider what is important for a democracy. Information in terms of access to the information, the production, and also the mediation you can have, the kind of government. So in France, there is a presidential democracy, republic, and in Italy, it's a parliamentary republic. The possibility of have a pluralism of ideas and the very important principle of checks and balances, the possibility to consider diversity and the otherness, not as a threat, but as an opportunity as well. The way we do or we deliberate, the way we produce laws, and the way we administrate the res publica. So a digital democracy should be able to respect as much as possible. When we talk with engineers, they say, there is no problem. We can do whatever we want. The tool is flexible. We just decide what we want. Okay. The problem is that when we say that techniques is not neutral, it means that the choice of the tool will force the shape of the democracy you want to. So what is important is that digital democracy is not just about an electronic procedure for voting. So just a kind of a digitization. So you transform like commerce, e-commerce, but actually it's absolutely the same thing. With the new ICT, we have the possibility of a different digitalization, which means that we can enhance maybe democracy. We can do something different, something that is not anymore what we used to do in the past. So my conclusion, I'm really not so positive about this because there are so many risks, and those risks can compromise the fundamental rights and freedoms. It could be, just to recall the title of the session, a dream or a good opportunity, but also a nightmare. Why? Because the key is internet. And what about the internet? Internet is the condition of our digital democracy and also of our lives, because we pass through the internet and the web, or the internet is not anymore what was in the 60s or in the 90s, where it was seen by John Perry Arlo as actually the no man's land, where you can do whatever you want. You have the very fundamental principle end to end. It means that no one is going through the content to say, yes, this, you cannot say this. No, this is, it's like sending a letter. You don't want the mailman open it before yourself. So it's exactly the same. And you know that this is not anymore possible because you have and so all the question of the net neutrality, which is unfortunately not always so reminded, and it's important because often in Europe, at least, we say, it doesn't matter. Anyway, that's the way it is. You can do nothing. So the problem is that there is an economic model associated to the use of internet, which means that your power is somehow conditioned by the quantity of money you have. So in Europe, we talked, and I take the regulation. I know that in the US, the question has been treated by Victor Picard and Elliot Burnham at Pennsylvania University after the net, very nice book. So it's quite a huge question in the US as well. And the Europe just decided to talk about open internet, which doesn't mean that this openness is free internet. And I put in orange through their internet service provider, which means that if you have money, you can subscribe for a very fast internet provider, and if you have not, you risk to need to look for a lot of advertising before getting the information, which means Bernays, Freud's nephew and the father of the American lobbying techniques, taught us how to manipulate consumers. So this problem, the non-neutrality of internet, is what makes digital democracy very, very, very hard, because the internet provider controls also information. What is information? It's just the representation of the world. But we do know that in politics, everyone lies. I mean, since fists, since the ancient Greek, they were actually trained to lie, to say two opposite versions of the same thing. I mean, what is truth? I mean, just one over there above us, but the rest is just a human narrative, the storytelling of the winner. So that, what does it mean to have an internet where we can access to the information? Which information? How can we select the information? Who does this selection? Can we consider it the opposite version? I think that on very delicate, I wouldn't mention them, topics, we do know that there is not, especially in France and in Europe in general, you cannot say whatever you want. We do not have a First Amendment that, even if it's not a constitutional right for American citizens, it's still something very untouchable. We do not have this. If you recall the French Human Rights Declaration, you have a separation between what is your right as a human being and what is your right as a citizen. And they said in 1789, you have the right to say whatever you want within the frame I allow you to say, which is actually very well said, but not so open. So the new technologies has changed the way we produce traditional media, like radio, TV, where the legitimation source of information. So we just said, I heard at the radio, I watched on TV, I found on internet, and now is ChatGPT told me. So, and this is kind of legitimation of the content of the information. Social media have created a kind of a very horizontal production. So all citizens are able to discuss, to produce news because they can witness something going on, take their phone, make a video, and just send it on their contact lists. But this doesn't mean the lack of a professional mediation could lead to populism and also to fake news. And we do know that a fake news can propagate 6 times faster than the truth, even if the truth doesn't exist. So something very wrong, false, fake, can be faster than the truth. So let's talk about misinformation, disinformation, whatever. But why don't we start thinking about silence and also reticence? The fact that communication, if you look at the social media, they are much more visual than discursive, which means that, I mean, you cannot talk with pictures or images. You have to talk, to discuss, to put arguments together, find contradiction, and go on in the argumentation. You just not can send a picture. I mean, this is not enough. But this is the world we live in. I wrote a paper on the fact that nowadays we are monads, not in a theological meaning as Leibniz was thinking, but we are just a mirror with no windows, no doors. There is nothing coming in, nothing getting out. We just want as mirror the reflex of someone else that likes us. So we count our existence on the basis of the likes we received. I have no social media, sorry. The second question, the filter bubble. We do know that all the algorithms are made so that actually you received what you already know. So there is no increasing of a knowledge. You just repeat what you already know, and you are filtered because you will be in contact only with people that think like you. So social divide. Alone together. We do know that all these social media are not, and I do stress this with my students, social media are just expression, means of expression. It means that if we recall Shannon or Laswell communication theories, we do know that a sender must give a message to a receiver. This is communication when the receiver gets me back the transformed message. But actually, if you look at the comments on what we post on social media, people don't talk each other. They don't go reading what was written 5, 6 pages before. They just post and that's it. I don't care what you think actually. But because I know that I will find people thinking like me, so the otherness is not anymore something that we look for. And when we renounce to the otherness, it means that we just become narcissist or solipsistic in a very philosophical sense, which is not something going in the idea of being with the other. So the idea of a public sphere, which is actually the core of the political communication and the field where all the citizens are together, risks to become a mosaic, which means that we are so fragmented that we are not anymore together. if you do not think like I do, I just erase from my contact list. That's so easy with the technological tools. But in real life, you cannot erase people, hopefully. So you have to deal with. So technological means are very, very, very easy. And the very Roman panem et circenses, which works in any time of the story, which is the best way to control citizens, giving food and entertainment, and they are so happy. I said, so about AI, and I go very fast on this, I think that has been said yesterday, the master and slave, the fact that actually man or human being is becoming kind of data treated by AI. So this in Hegelian inversion is quite dangerous in my opinion. So the last point, how AI can enhance democracy. Yes, there are platforms that are able to treat the posts of people. There are chatbots that recalls your rights. There are tools that are able to check if the government is spending too much and so on. But I actually think that there are so many risks related to the use of this kind of technologies, because once again, if I do not program properly the tool will be biased. The tool will be lacking of transparency. That was one of the reasons the Italian movement who used those tools was completely defeated, because it was not clear what was behind this machine. And final, I asked ChatGPT, tell me, what are the tools, what are the risks, what are the opportunity? So it seems that AI is still aware. I don't know if conscient, but anyway, it seems that it's getting aware of all the possible risks. So conclusion, if techniques is never neutral, the choice. And this choice must be made by citizens and not by industries or other economic power. I mean, I think that we do know what happened when private social media interfere in political communication and also in electoral communication. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. A salient reminder of the effects of policy landscapes and political differences on the so-called neutral tools shaping all of our lives ever more. Next up, Professor Wolff on Cruising Decolonial Utopias, AI Benefits and Threats, Real versus Imagined.
Set up here for a minute.
Do we need space?
Okay. Okay, yours looks good. Mine was a little fuzzy. Oh, finally here. Thank you all so much for having me. It is a delight to be able to think with so many astute people about such a pressing and important issue. I'm delighted to be a part of this conversation. And I thought we would start off today with a quote from Ray Bradbury. He writes, "In science fiction, we dream in order to colonize in space, including, we must imagine the future, including the new technologies required." And then in response to that, we have Octavia Butler, who says, "Freedom isn't free. It takes both its slaves and its benefactors, and its benefactors make sure it doesn't cost them too much." So science fiction as a genre illuminates socio-political inequalities by exploring worlds otherwise. Imagining alien cultures amidst technological advancements, we open ourselves up to reassess our social norms and power structures. Science fiction emboldens us to confront our deepest fears. What do we consider monstrous? What if we find that we are the villains? Personal computers, the internet, and cell phones have been touted as great equalizers across countries and classes. Unfortunately, such promises have not come to fruition. Neither has increased efficiency in communication freed us for more leisure or emotional connection. Rather, workers bemoan being over-accessible and struggle to disconnect from screens. ChatGPT and AI are rapidly altering our landscapes and our relationships. I think I'm on the right slide, yes. Okay, this paper interrogates the distinction between real versus imagined benefits and threats of artificial intelligence through the lens of theological ethics and decolonial queer crip theory. Martin Luther's The Freedom of a Christian provides useful language for what it means to be free from sin and free for others. Jose Munoz's Cruising Utopia offers insight into the importance of unrealized queer utopias. Decolonial queer theologies present ontologies and epistemologies needed to imagine utopias in which humans revel in contextual, embodied, responsible relationships resistant to data capitalism and algorithmic coloniality. So rather than fantasizing about freedom from being human or for capitalism, I dream of AI freeing us for responsible relationships and from capitalist exploitation, environmental racism, and AI nationalism. A Sabbath post-work culture in which people are free to play and create for others remains an unrealized utopia because AI is embedded within a capitalist framework that lacks responsibility and accountability to be ethical, especially in a Christian theological sense, informed by the doctrines of creation, incarnation, and redemption. Of course, we will not get into all of these aspects of the paper today, but we'll begin with these misplaced desires and fears. So first, transhumanists presume that we share their desire to be free from being human, from human limitations and vulnerability. I have argued that such pursuits exacerbate loneliness and isolation, whereas the risks inherent to human precarity facilitate intimacy. Embedded within the desire for autonomous independence is a neoliberal libertarian value system. Second, AI enthusiasts seek freedom for individualized products, improved efficiency, and capitalist profits. Consumers prioritize convenience, and investors increase share value. Poverty is moralized within this framework. Instead of provoking charity, impoverishment brands people as lazy and sinful. When the aims of AI are directed by capitalism, care for the poor is mischaracterized as enablement. Those with the means to consume are presumed to be virtuous. Third, the concern that AI will lead to job loss is also embedded within a capitalist value system. Nearly a century ago, Max Weber traced the intersections of capitalism with Protestantism The notion of vocation, that work is not an unfortunate necessity, but rather a morally weighted calling from God, primes Protestants for exploitation. Contemporary commentators on AI's threat to work too often lack the imagination for a world in which access to basic needs for survival are not mediated by commerce. Underlying this fear is the neoliberalist desire to be free for capitalist consumption. So if AI enthusiasts are wrong about its benefits, freedom from being human and freedom for capitalism, what are the actual threats that AI poses? Kate Crawford and Vladlen Joler claim at every level, contemporary technology is rooted in the exploitation of human bodies, starting from extracting metals from the earth and the resulting environmental effects, to the sweatshops of programmers that keep the system going, to the personal data about the user that the device gathers. The pervasive harm of AI is not a new concern. This is a repetition of colonial exploitation. McKenna reminds us that the impact of the 3 previous industrial revolutions had on Africans and on Africa. First, the transatlantic slave trade, where Africans were reduced to a commodity. Second, colonization and dispossession. And third, globalization, where African countries in most cases lack or have no control or ownership over their media and finance, among other industries. It is far more likely that we will reproduce these historical patterns, especially if not making concerted efforts to break from them. The scramble for natural resources is not limited to money or water. It includes human matter. Researchers are increasingly attending to the biodata as the next highest valued commodity. Disproportionately, this affects indigenous people. Anthropologist Keelu Fox explains the need to protect against the commodification of indigenous people's DNA. It's prized for its immense diversity and long history. Consequently, decolonial scholars are calling for policies that protect indigenous sovereignty over data. As with sovereign rights to lands and territories, genetic resources and genomic data are important resources within indigenous communities to which they hold rights, relationships, responsibilities, and obligations now and into the future. Indigenous lives remain vulnerable to appropriation. Due to indigenous epistemologies of personhood, rights ought to extend to non-humans. Lee Hutchins, for example, studied invertebrates on native Hawaiian coffee plantations. He understood that the arthropod samples he was collecting qualify as indigenous data because they come from native lands with cultural significance, and many native Hawaiians consider the arthropods to be kin. To respect indigenous rights, autonomy, and privacy, Hutchins requested the farmer's consent before sharing the data in his paper and redacted identifying information. A variety of indigenous groups are developing best practices guidelines and self-managed data repositories. Honoring indigenous people, however, remains optional for researchers on this issue because ethical research is understood in individual rather than collective terms. Instead of focusing on potential job loss, the real threats that AI poses are familiar and expansive. Akaroglu asserts that there are countless ecological and social impacts across this value chain, from the conflicts and conditions of the workers mining the valuable materials that go into making chips, to the pollution caused from the processing of these materials. There are also reports of underpaid, overexploited workers being used to support responses in generative AI systems, and significant issues with bias embedded in the training methods used. So-called ghost workers are paid very low wages and placed in unsafe working conditions, resulting in some scholars deeming them prisoners. In addition to personal injuries, there are political disparities. Hogarth suggests that AI superpowers are controlling AI-related policies, and regulations without taking into account the specific circumstances of African nations. He refers to this phenomenon as AI nationalism. Okay, so having outlined some of the imagined versus real threats that AI poses, I will now turn to the distinctive features of what it means to be human in a Christian theological sense, and then present a variety of decolonial examples for cruising utopias. The three main features of the human condition that remain inaccessible to AI include contextualization, embodiment, and responsible relationality. Drawing on embodied cognitive science, neuroscience, and phenomenology, Simone Ball and Ulrich Nissen point to contextualization as one of the main features unique to humanity. They find bodies are crucial for making sense of one's world, and indeed for truly understanding it. The frame problem, as it is called, refers to the inability of AI to understand context. Epistemologically, nothing is ever context-free for us, and bodies are indispensable for how we understand, experience, and make meaning of our world. Thus, the type of knowing and learning that AI has developed is incomparable. Without an experiencing body, with the fundamental interests in the world, really understanding facts and relations in it seems impossible for AI. More specifically, AI systems are extremely unlikely to ever attain the human qualities of intuition, empathy, and knowing. Phenomenology requires a sentient body rather than a functional container for consciousness to move beyond the simulation of consciousness. Some scholars believe that a phenomenological approach would align AI values with social and ecological justice. Though I remain skeptical, I can't talk today. What a day not to be able to talk. Okay, I remain skeptical about the feasibility of such a project. My concern, however, has less to do with whether technology will achieve something as lofty as sentience. My doubts have grown since learning that chatbots and AI systems rank higher than physicians on empathy. If true, there's no need for striving to develop technology that thinks or feels. Under capitalism, humans are content with, perhaps prefer, the facsimile of empathy. The complexity of human-to-human interactions are undesirable to consumers who've been conditioned to prize convenience and cost savings over all else. Christian theologians and ethicists grasp the import of embodiment. Emily Towns writes about the political aspects and points out that because historically, Black bodies have been dehumanized and commoditized, to love the body is radical. Following this affirmation, she goes on to argue that toxic waste landfills are a contemporary version of lynching of a whole people. She makes this argument on the grounds that the toxic waste facilities are often located near households of impoverished Black women. Such redlining exposes folks to high levels of pollution and toxins that lead to illness and disease. Loving the body requires loving the environment because they impact one another. Towns explains, the yoking of civil and environmental rights is crucial to ontological wholeness. To love one's heart is to care about one's environment, to strategize and anticipate the future, to draw on the community of resistance and solidarity. Perhaps it logically follows then that a post-human future would indiscriminately destroy the environment. Likewise, freedom from capitalist exploitation and environmental racism would enable loving the body, God, and our environment. Kelly Brown Douglas explains that the body mediates all relationality. In order for us to encounter ourselves, one another, and God, we do so in our bodies, not apart from them. This tradition makes clear that it's only through our bodies that humans can reach God, and that God reaches out to us. If capitalism estranges us, play restores human dignity precisely because it is fun, neither pragmatic nor profitable. Douglas writes about the enslaved in a religious service, and she says that there, the enslaved could engage in play. could laugh and have fun, and suggested that they were more than beasts of labor. And as much as play subverts oppression, divests evil of its power, and affirms the humanity and sanctity of human bodies, then it is nothing less than a holy activity. The danger that AI poses is not to our jobs, because those dehumanize and exploit us. AI offers freedom. If it offers freedom, it ought to be the freedom to play. Play restores our humanity to us, and it frees us to develop relationality. Religion uniquely offers thick ontologies and epistemologies needed to cruise decolonial utopias. There are many decolonial frameworks available for forging new data epistemologies, technological justice, and tribal sovereignty. Rather than produce climate refugees and exploit prisoners' labor to serve capitalist AI purposes, decolonial theologies empower us with justice-focused technologies of resistance. In my paper, I briefly introduced some decolonial frameworks from various global regions, including Ubuntu ethics, Bemba theocosmology, Xi'an, and Kokoro, but I don't have time to detail all of those for you all today, but they exist. Check them out. The variety of cultures, geographies, and perspectives here demonstrate an abundance of ethical interventions. Attempts to decolonize AI and encourage the use of technology for political resistance are among the most innovative developments in ethics. As discussed above, the stakes are immensely high for our environment relationships themselves. Despite these inroads and the invaluable contribution of dreaming otherwise, I maintain that this work remains at the level of cruising decolonial utopias. So how might queer of color crip theory relate to decolonial utopias? Alison Kafer has astutely underscored the conspicuous absence of disability in utopian futures. She writes, "I imagine futures otherwise, arguing for a cripped politics of access and engagement based on the work of disability activists and theorists." Kafer's book, Feminist Queer Crip, offers a politics of crip futurity, an insistence on thinking things, these imagined futures, and hence these lived presents differently. In other words, futurity often casts disabled people as obstacles to progress marked by eugenics for nation building. Kafer goes on to critique identity politics and disability studies, preferring crip theory as an effective tool for resisting capitalism, environmental destruction, and transhumanist ableism. Her argument points to a broader problem with virtue ethics that focus on individual action rather than coalition building for policy change. My vision of a future in which we are free to be fully human aligns with Kafer's commitments to reproductive, environmental, and racial justice, and adds to it the importance of religion. The desire to be immortal and fear of job loss misses Christian theological notions of what it means to be human. Within Christian theology, human existence is fragile. People cannot subsist independently. Existence itself is predicated on the Creator, and life relies upon sustenance from creation, human and non-human. The incarnation attests to the goodness of the human body as it relates to frailty and death. Through a human body, God fully reveals God's self. Jesus did not evade suffering or death. He offers salvation through his continued existence in a human body that died, resurrected, and ascended. He offers salvation through his, I read that sentence. Furthermore, Jesus was present at creation where Sabbath rest was introduced. In observing the Sabbath, we are reminded of our dependence upon God for life. Breaking from work attests to our freedom from enslavement, exploitation, and captivity. This means that our identities are not in our work, but as adopted co-heirs with Christ. Weekly, we interrupt the gears of capitalist commoditization of our bodies and labor to reaffirm the freedom found in God. Marxist feminist theorist Kathy Weeks persuasively argues for anti-work politics and post-work imaginaries in her book, The Problem with Work. Hers is not a hedonist call for self-indulgence, but rather she argues for a Marxist feminist economy in which humanity's basic needs are met to allow the freedom for time and space to innovate. We might demand a basic income, not so that we can have, do, or be what we already want, do, or are, but because it might allow us to consider and experiment with different kinds of lives, with wanting, doing, and being otherwise. To imagine different world orders, Weeks explains, necessitates daydreaming. To this I add that religion specifically offers a proper vision for the freedom to be fully human and relationally responsible to others. Our capacity for injury and death point to the importance of responsible relations. Aversion to accountability undergirds the desire for absolute independence. The emphasis on political and social transformation through relationships is one shared by crip and queer theorists as an alternative to the limited approach of identity politics. Rather than finding solidarity among like people, joining comrades in efforts to advance a more just and equitable society better aligns with Luther's notion of the freedom for others. In addition to the immense class divide that will be more pronounced with AI, there's a lack of responsibility. Unlike algorithms that chart machine processes, large language models remain a black box to their programmers. If we are responsible for what we do to others, what does that mean for AI agents? AI agents are fully autonomous systems that make decisions, complete tasks, and learn from experience. The impossibility of tracing AI agents' decision-making adds to the complexity of attributing responsibility to programmers, designers, distributors, users, and so on. Inroads are, however, being made into anthropocentric epistemologies and ontologies. Blair Adder-Frost considers reimaginings of AI in which humans are decentered from AI-human relationships. Kinship and mutuality with the planet are valued over and against its subordination, extractivism, and utilization. She identifies scholarship valuing community, care, justice, and sustainability. However, Adder-Frost acknowledges that these goals remain unrealized because a significant practical challenge will be to combine those values with new ontologies of AI and operationalize those values in AI systems, applications, and governance structures. As such, speculative querying of AI is an alluring, though elusive, utopia. For now, I do not believe that AI can achieve the sort of utopia wherein we can be free from capitalism and for being fully human, to play, recognize our interdependence, and pursue responsible relationships. Religion offers a vision of what it means to be fully human and free for responsible relationships. The religious epistemology and ontology described here will be vital to decolonizing AI and freeing us for queer crip utopias. Rather than fantasizing about freedom from being human or for labor and consumerism, I dream of AI as freeing us for responsible relationships and from capitalist exploitation, environmental racism, and AI nationalism. A Sabbath post-work culture in which people are free to play and create for others remains an unrealized utopia, I conclude, because AI is embedded within a capitalist framework that lacks responsibility and accountability to be ethical in a Christian theological sense, informed by the doctrines of creation, incarnation, and redemption. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Wolff, for such a cogent teasing out of the real and imagined problems, ethical problems of AI for us. We have a good half hour for questions now, so I believe there will be a roving mic about to rove if people wish to. First question over here.
Hello. For Dr. Wolff. So part of my research and work focuses on meaning that people experience in AI worlds and how AI can disrupt meaning. And while I'm all for utopian, like post-capitalist society where work is not prioritized, what we see is actually in areas of life where employment or whatever is disrupted, there is a corresponding lack of meaning and people suffer accordingly, or even retirement. How might we understand what that utopia, or what are some of the frameworks that might come to replace that or help people anchor themselves in such societies or moments?
It won't come out. Okay. Thank you for that question. And you know, I work at a Lutheran college where it's all about vocation all the time, so it's a fair question where I think a lot of people would say work is meant to be meaningful and have a greater purpose, an ends, so to speak. And I do think that that's utterly different than what we experience within our context, what we understand as work today, and how we tie our identities to our work and our worth, whether that's literal material worth, but also social and spiritual worth, is quite horrifying, and I don't think very religiously grounded. So what I like about what Kathy Weeks is doing here is she isn't saying that we should laze about, right? She's saying that if you have the time to daydream and if you have the time to create and to do things, it's not working for a profit or for an ends, but that's also very enriching and necessary for society and for relationships, and that's a beautiful thing. And this is part of, I think, what gets at what my frustration with students loving AI to write their papers for me. I know it doesn't happen here at Yale, but it happens for me at my college, is that I feel like they've missed the journey, and I want to take them on a hike, and I want to say like, oh, look at that butterfly. Oh, I wonder what that fungus is. You know, like, oh, here we go. Let's stop and have a snack. Let's chat. How are you doing? And I feel like their response is, oh, but we could just drive to where we're going. And on a hike, you're not really going somewhere, right? Like, you're going on a journey. You're sometimes circling. And so I think that sometimes their understanding of what reading or writing is too utilitarian in that way, and that what Weeks is pointing to is more of that romance and of that enrichment of the hike and of the journey and of the relationality that is vital to meaning in human existence. I mean, it's the stuff of life, right? Like when you miss your loved ones, it's often just doing nothing together. Or it might be that they go grocery shopping with you and it's more fun because they're with you. And so I think that all the things we tend to devalue in this market economy is like the actual spiritual good stuff.
And I think at this stage of the semester, some of us will be very happy to be a basic minimum wage society. Next question. I saw a hand somewhere over there. Oh, yes, please.
Question for Valentina. I think there's this general sense of resignation over the past 2 days about anything we say here affecting what the folks in Silicon Valley are doing to progress these technologies. I wonder if in Europe, where in the face of technological change, there's been maybe more of a stronger regulatory culture. I think of something like GDPR, where in the case of data privacy, there's been a strong body of regulation that's been produced that based on that regulation, significant fines have been levied in the Republic of Ireland against companies like Facebook. And those actions have, while not solved all the problems, have influenced things somewhat in a direction that's a little different from where they might have been if things were only done in the way they are in the US. Do you see any potential for that sort of action in the EU in the face of AI?
Yes, the Europe started in 2015 to regulate. Does it work? Okay. The AI, I think that the law is very too late about this, because it's too late. Most of the AI tools are already there, and even if they I don't think it's enough, and a good law is a good that introduces a sanction as well. So there is no sanctions if you use these tools. For instance, Prime Minister, Italian Prime Minister Meloni has made a kind of interdiction of using AI. The RAI, you know, the news public channel always writes, we didn't use any AI tools to produce this information. So there is a kind of tentative of regulation for this, but in the I would say yeah, as Dr. Wolff said, there are so many people using this to pass through exams. There is no possibility to check everything. It's almost impossible. And I think that where the law is missing, there is just ethics that could be do something for this, but ethics must not be compulsory either. So yeah, I don't think that the solution will be the regulation. It's not enough, it's too late.
Two questions on the student table behind.
Thank you. Another digital democracy question. You talked a bit throughout your talk, I don't know if you used the term, but about echo chambers and the sort of echo chamber phenomena on social media. The way it was described in the course of your talk was that you wouldn't run into anyone who doesn't think like you. It's possible other folks have more peaceable Twitter threads than I did, but it strikes me that a lot of online spaces are quite contentious, and people are not just encountering, but actively contending with views they find that they're in opposition to all the time. Yet I also think the end result is correct, that echo chambers do end up being phenomena, and you get these kind of disrupted sort of spheres of trust. So my question is, if you take that to be correct, that you can still encounter things you disagree with in social spaces, and they can fail to ever challenge presuppositions you might otherwise want to change, how might that phenomena work? How do echo chambers disrupt democracy even when we run into views we disagree with?
If I'm not wrong, I would say that it's not always so possible to debate individually collective topics. So I don't think that the social debate would be enough to discuss in the legitimated chambers. So for me, this is quite important that there is actually an institutional system that must provide laws and discuss topics, and this for me is the assembly or the parliament or whatever constitutional chambers you have. Yeah, the risk is that we just express opinion, doxa. We always stay in doxa, so the risk is that you just choose the majority of this doxa, and there is no taking into account of all the minorities or different positions. There is also, in my opinion, the fact that when you do not think mainstreaming, you are somehow tagged as complotist, or you are very quickly labeled as something that is not worth of attention or not legitimate, or someone who is hiding something, or who is just not so trusting. I mean, we had also so many proofs that at certain moments the executive should haven't been trusted.
If I could follow up on
Historical.
that. To follow up on that briefly, I think you're invoking institutional systems is interesting. Do you think there is a way to make online spaces conducive to become deliberative spaces, or is it a limitation of the medium, full stop?
Okay, yeah, there are already platforms. You know, there is a Habermas machine, which is already exists, and it's a kind of platform where you have an AI that treats the natural language discussion, that tries to do a mediation. Okay, so I'm very skeptical. Because on which basis? I mean, AI doesn't think. It's just statistics. So the association of words are made on the basis of how many times already those two words were together. So I mean, we are in a theological faculty. We maybe because I did philosophy, but thinking is something else, and critical thinking is something else too. So I'm not sure that this platform is able to mine the best argument, and the how do you say the would be the best solution for, yeah.
Thank you both for really wonderful talks. My question is directed to Professor Wolff. So I'm very curious about the relationship between, on the one hand, transhumanist ideologies and ableism, and on the other hand, certain kinds of ableist Christian eschatologies, because they seem to bear a kind of resemblance, but I'm curious if we can learn anything by comparing them, and if so, what is it we learn? So.
I feel like I have such a short answer. It's like, yes, they're both bad. I don't know what to say beyond that. I mean, it's really troubling when you find out what someone's vision of a utopia is. And, you know, for Bradbury, it was colonizing. And so, yeah, if our utopia is ableist, maybe we should pause and reflect upon that. And I hope that Christianity, I know there have been efforts, of course, in that realm, but this is the beauty of interdisciplinary work, is I think that instead of, you know, reinventing the wheel, we can really rely on people who've done amazing work like Alison Kafer, like Kathy Weeks, and integrate it into our theologies.
Other questions?
If we can just keep passing it down the student table. I have a question for Professor Wolff as well. You mentioned play as holy activity, and I really like that phrase. I'm also very worried about the way that capitalism has traditionally exploited our desire to play. And with AI specifically, I know I watched a YouTuber who did a speed run of how quickly can we get this AI to do an evil thing. And it was like a ChatGPT speed run that was like a fun thing. And I'm just curious, how do we take something like play, and like, is there a way to protect against the way that it's being commodified or being subsumed in this AI drive? Is there a good thing in AI if it enables play? Like, how do you see that relation?
I think this is a great question, and certainly we know people maybe who've been victim to those games or something with AI where it's like, oh, it'll turn you into a cartoon character if you put your face here, you know, and you have to give your bio data in exchange for it, and so people get tricked into it. There's a meme that's like, for this fun game, just give me your social security number and home address, and I love it. It's like, yes, that's what's actually happening. The thing that it's asking for in order for you to play, it's this bait and switch. So it definitely can be used in these nefarious ways that are very different than what I think is going on with what Douglas was speaking about specifically, right? Where it was to restore the humanity of enslaved people who are treated, like she was saying, as beasts of burden. So to say dance, to say laugh, to say weep, like you're allowed to have emotions, you're allowed to be in your body is so beautiful. And so maybe we have to be careful about how we define play. Like, does it need to be embodied? When I think of my favorite video games, it's the ones like, oh, we're gonna dance, you know, like we're doing something with it. And so, yeah, I think it's interesting that AI could be, yeah, it's obviously being used for the market more often than not. And it will be interesting to see with the younger generation if they then have a turn back to like crafts and handmaking and things that were becoming like lost knowledges for certain generations. So I hope that there's more play. I think there's a book that just came out on this. I just haven't read it yet. Does anyone know this like theology of play? Okay, maybe I fantasized about it, but we can do it.
So, you know, one of the effects of AI is it does democratize the creation of other sort of technologies, and one of them is actually play. So, in fact, I wrote an article about this recently, and then just today somebody was posting about how they took an academic paper, fed it into Claude 3.7, and said, make a simulation game to teach these concepts to my students. Yeah. And in one shot it did it, and then they shared that learning activity with their students, and they kind of learned the concepts embedded in the paper by doing this. And of course all it cost was a Claude 3.7 subscription for like $20 a month or something like that. I use AI coding tools increasingly, and I think that by the end of this year, the projection is they'll be as good as a mid-level programmer. And so the democratization of the ability to create like video games and things like that is rapidly increasing, as well as the ability to create other kinds of applications that might further things like political kind of discourse and things like that. An example of that is like the anti-conspiracy theory bots that have been created and demonstrated to reduce conspiracy theory belief in a way that's actually quite durable and surprising to the researchers. So, I mean, I wonder if we could sort of comment on sort of some of the positive sort of applications of these technologies towards these goals that you all share, right?
Do you want to go first? Yes, I do think that, as I said, maybe I was I stressed on, or I focused only on the negative sides because I think there is already too much optimism about this. But I do think, for me, ChatGPT or AI was a very useful tool, but because actually I was trained with the ancient methods. So I was able to ask the good questions. As Kant said, the problem is solved when you ask when you put the problem in the good terms, so that the solution is easy to find. So I think that I have already been able to think this. So I can ask as if I had an assistant, she or he would help me in my job. But I know that I've got my background, which is quite strong. I mean, I used to study Latin and Greek in high school in Italy. I know that if you put your Greek version in Google Translate, so you don't need even to pay, the result is there, and you have the solution. But actually, the method is important. It's not just to have the translation from the Greek, but it's the fact that when we were in high school, we have a very huge Greek-Italian dictionary, so we have to choose which is the best word to express that concept, because it was about philosophy or history of ancient Greece. So what was for me was the method, which in Greek means go through a path. I think that when we just trust AI, we do not ask about the epistemological grounds. We do not ask why and what is the logical path according to which ChatGPT can say this in that sense. And I think about my students. I mean, being a historian doesn't mean that the French Revolution was in 1789. I mean, yes, that's correct, but this doesn't mean that you have understood what was behind the French Revolution, the American Revolution. Italian do not do any revolution. So the reason that create that specific moment. So yeah, I used AI tools because I was curious, which is part of the researcher being. I was very curious because I was like, wow, it's impossible. I didn't ask you to make me a scheme like the one I did. And I said, yeah, well, incredible. And I use it when I have to do multiple choice questions. I mean, you know, it's not so intellectually stimulating, especially if you have 300 students. You just want to have as many questions as possible so that they do not copy each other. They don't. They can exercise before getting, you know, like for driving license, you exercise before do the final exam. So, I mean, AI was much better, especially because I didn't want to invest part of my time in preparing 600 questions. So I do agree that this aspect is positive. But for what I said, thinking or critical thinking and imagine other things, I think that, and science fiction is very useful for this. Ex Machina was a very good film, and also Black Mirror as well. I mean, how can you deal with contradiction? Something that is built according to a very strict logic just start bugging. It's what I said before. There is not a tool without an aim, a finality, otherwise, or produce me an output. If the tool doesn't do it, it's a bug. It just turns in loop. Yeah.
Thank you for bringing this up. Because of this conference, I have been challenging myself to engage with more AI enthusiasts and to also play with it, which I was very reluctant to do. And so I don't know if anyone here has read or heard Ethan Mollick, but he does a great job of showing positive uses of it. He teaches his classes entirely AI, required 100%, but his book, Co-Intelligence, is arguing for all of us to use it at least as a co-intelligence, as a helper tool. And he does do a good job of what you're describing, where he says, using AI as a tutor is completely different than using AI as a cheat, right? So you can ask AI, oh, I'm going on a job interview. This is my CV. Can you pose questions? These are the people who are going to be on the committee or the panel who are asking me questions. And it can role play with you. And you can say, okay, give me feedback. And it can be an advisor. It can be a mentor. So it does have capabilities, but that's different than how people sometimes use it. I know that most of my friends who are not in the academy are required to use AI at work. And so they've been telling me about how great it is or how they feel like it's pushed on them, but I do think we have to address this. This is the direction that labor is going in. But we can be more or less sophisticated with it, because when we ask it to just do something, it's often terrible because it is based on the most common words, right? But Ethan has taught me that you need to do a back and forth, and you give it feedback and you ask it for feedback, and the results end up much better. So that's quite intriguing. So for example, I was writing a letter of recommendation for a friend for an award. And so I wrote the letter, then I uploaded the award description to Claude, and then I uploaded my letter, and I said, do I address everything in the award description? Like, did I do a good job, type of thing? Give me feedback, tell me how I can improve it. So it says, oh yeah, you've hit on all these things, and it gave me four bullet points of what I needed to improve. I was kind of confused by the fourth bullet point. So I said, oh, interesting, tell me what you mean by that, because I don't know what you're saying here. And Claude said, oh, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. That's actually not a problem with your letter. So I think AI doesn't function the way people think it does. Okay, so I just tell my students it's like a calculator that sometimes gets the answer wrong. Like we tend to think of AI as a calculator, and it's not at all a calculator. It's not at all like machines that we're used to using. It's so much more like a people-pleasing best friend who says, no one's gonna notice you got toilet paper on your shoe while you're walking around. It's totally fine. It so wants to please you, that's why it hallucinates. That's why it makes up things. And that's a completely different dynamic to be interacting with. And I think too often we're trying to get it to do things that calculators do, when really it may be better at helping you write a sensitive text to a loved one, which is more horrifying, right? It's better at that. You can't ask it, like Ethan talks about, you can't give it your paper and say, make this 500 words. It'll mess up on that because it doesn't recognize words the way we do. But you can say, write a sonnet. So all the things that people think AI can't do, oh, it's not emotional, oh, it's not creative, it is, way more. It's not, it's a different genre. So I agree, there's good things. I don't know, I think I was a little bit scared recently. I used it to do a game for my students to save me time. I was like, oh, please make a crossword puzzle for me. And it gave me this long, encouraging paragraph afterwards about, I hope it goes well today with your students, like you're doing a really good job, and it was embarrassing because it hit me. Like I normally identify as a robot, I'm like, what are emotions, humans? I don't understand them. But it like, oh my gosh, you encouraged me. Oh, no, like I don't want that, right? And it's scary, like that is what it's good at. And so like, could we have AI give us a pep talk every morning? Like maybe that's its function more so than like doing our taxes. I don't know.
I mean, what you're describing, Ethan would say that's the jagged edge of AI capability, which keeps shifting. And so you don't actually know until you've tried something whether it can do it or not. And therefore, it requires the expertise to be able to assess. Yeah. So its most successful use cases are when you yourself can evaluate the output. Absolutely. And you're just shortcutting what you could do yourself, right? But then the counter argument is that you've just unemployed, right, a potential assistant, right, or junior, a TA to create questions or something else. And that's, where we get into this. Yeah. But I also want to encourage us to think not only as like passive consumers of these technologies that have been created by the tech bros, but also as people that can actually build these tools. Like I am building these tools, right? So the questions that I'm asking are kind of critical questions around pedagogy and application of these, right? So like what I need as a technologist is like the input from the teaching community about like what these should be doing, how they should be acting. And what I'm mostly hearing at this point is critiques about how it fails, right? So I just want to kind of put that into the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Probably time for one or two more questions before we head to lunch. I see one question over on the table over here.
Hi. I guess it's more a comment than really a question towards Dr. Wolff. I liked your talk. Yeah, when it comes to play, I feel bad. I feel like I shouldn't have been the last one to speak now. I hope someone else gets another question after this. Look, okay, I was in an Uber last night, and the guy was from Brazil, and we're chatting, and he says, he wants to do a little bit of traveling within the States and then head back to Brazil. And, he's like, the people here are not happy. That's sad. That's very sad. You know, it's sad to have someone, you know, come into our country and think that about us. And, you know, like, why? Because they play in Brazil. You know, a kid can ride a dirt bike and do a wheelie down the street, you know, and not get the cops called on him. You know, they go to the beach and they play soccer together. You know, they play, they hang out. And, yeah, this is my first time here in Connecticut. I'm from Florida. And I can't imagine, like, a kid doing a wheelie on a dirt bike around here without, like, the cops getting called on him immediately. I mean, like, we call the cops in Florida, sure, but, like, there's way more leniency, I'd say. You know, like, there's car meets and stuff like that in Florida. And people hang out.
We have plenty of kids doing wheelies on bikes in the middle of the road as you're driving past them, so.
And, you know, and it's like, it's you know, it's like, okay, it can get annoying, but it's like, what I want to say is that I think that we have to consider in our culture here in America where mischief and play come together. I think that we've labeled mischief as, you know, as a misdemeanor, basically. And, you know, our teens are struggling, and they don't have anywhere to hang out, and they don't have anywhere to be mischievous. And I think that that's a core part of play. And that's all I want you to consider, I guess.
Thank you. Any comment from either of you? That's great. Okay, that's a perfect point at which to break for lunch. I think we're coming back here for 1:45 for a keynote with Paul Schertz. Thank you. Thank you very much to our panelists.